Hi, my name's Josh. I'm 1/3 of Hoopsnake Studios. This year we took part in GMTK 2024, which was an incredible experience. We didn't win, we didn't even come in the top 500, but I think we won quite a lot anyway in the things we took away from the Game Jam. So I'd love to talk through our process, talk through the schedule of the 4 days and highlight the things that we did really well and also look at maybe some of the things that we struggled with along the way. The first thing I think we did really well was we were super organised. We met the day before the Game Jam, so the Thursday evening, for an hour and just sat and talked about what we were hoping to do, how we were going to work, setting up our GitHub, getting our GODOT project ready, making sure that all the things were in place.
Craig is now recording.
Why does he look like a bear?
Because he's a bear.
Does Craig want to see my delicious looking dinner?
He doesn't do video.
No.
It just went through that. But thank you. That's definitely going in the video.
The next day, on the Friday, we met at 5:30, just before the prompts came out, so that we could get ourselves into the mindset, get ready to work. And then prompts were revealed, and we spent that entire evening just brainstorming games. We had a lengthy period of time where we all chatted and threw random ideas around, some of which were great.
I feel like the obvious one is some sort of, you're a small character going around a very large world.
What about building some kind of emotional resolve to scale some sort of challenge that is not a physical one?
Building a company, a product you release to a small market, and then it needs to rapidly scale as you get more and more popular worldwide.
And some of which weren't very good.
I think something lizard scale or dragon scale or...
Fish have scales. The ocean is very big. Oh, it could be about fish getting jacked in a gym, and you've got maybe you're the manager of a fish gym.
We gradually, through that process, honed in on a few ideas that we all liked the general shape of and thought could be something achievable to make within the time span we had available.
We could each pick a concept, either our favourite or one we really don't like, and then run with that each on our own for an hour and come back and repitch it.
It doesn't have to be fish themed, but bonus points if it is.
And then we ran through each of the pitches and used that to hone in on which ideas were coming to life the most, which ones were getting us most excited.
The next one is much more akin to that. It's a simple 3D ocean map. You swim around as a single fish. Other sea creatures buoy to you and follow you around. There's loads of floating rubbish in the water. All of it's like physics objects that you can bump into. And once your shoal gets big enough, you can sort of push it out the way. And you're basically pushing the rubbish out into the path of fishing boats that would then like whisk it away, get it out of the coral reef. As you get more and more rubbish out, the reef will recover and look nicer. So it starts out all brown and Bristol Channel-y and a bit gross. And then like the more rubbish you get out, the more like the coral returns and the water clears up and you get more and more of this beautiful nature vibe. The fun comes a lot more from vibes than gameplay here. Like the gameplay is quite simple, relaxing. There's nothing stressful. You're just pushing rubbish around in the water and just like swimming and enjoying the environment. But removing the rubbish is really satisfying because you get to see the direct results of like getting it out. Like the place gets nicer and nicer.
And so by the end of the Friday evening, we had chosen an idea that we all liked, we all thought was achievable, something that we would enjoy making, we would learn a lot making, most importantly, and also something that would be fun to play as part of a game jam. We did go for something that we knew was going to be a bit of a challenge and we knew was going to be a little bit different to a lot of the other things that you'd see on a game jam.
I think it will need a hell of a lot of polish, and we've only got one of us who can 3D model. This is the thing, if we can execute the 3D one, it will be the best finished product.
I think there's always that element of like we should make something that we would want to play.
But we really wanted to push the boat and make something that we could take on afterwards and further develop. The first proper day of the game jam, we had planned to spend the entire day just structuring everything we were going to do. We took our one-pager, the pitch that had been done the day before, and we refined it. We fleshed out all the different areas. We worked out what exactly it would need to become finished to the standard of a game jam.
So we need a game design document.
We do. Obviously, we need a Boids system. Does our Boids system need to include... It needs to include individual different types of fish that presumably move together in shoals of those types of fish naturally until the player comes along.
We listed all the ideas we thought were good. We took out all the ones that we thought were probably beyond the scope of what we had time for, worked out which areas we were going to really push, really try and make something special. There's always an element of compromise when it comes to making any kind of project, and especially making a project in a short period of time.
Now's a great time to be really refining what is a must-have and what is not a must-have.
This brings us in really nicely to something that I think we did really, really well, which was using Trello, which is a piece of Kanban software, to list out all the things that needed to be done. We just made a huge Trello Kanban board, assigned all the different projects to different people so we knew who was going to be working on what. We'd scheduled our jam with the idea that by the end of the third day, we would have something we could upload to Itch, just in case. So we had a finished viable product, and then we would spend the final day, the Tuesday, just refining and polishing it. Didn't quite end up working out like that, but it was a really good idea, and I think working towards that set us up really solidly for finishing in time. We had allowed the whole day on the Saturday for planning, but we found that by about 1 o'clock we had a pretty solid plan, and we thought it would be better off now just starting.
Tell me about Boids.
Boids. So Boids, short for bird-like oids. I don't know what oids are. But they're bird-like, is an algorithm developed in the 90s, I think. The idea is, with 3 rules, you can simulate these oids that are bird-like to flock together. And the 3 rules are, they will try and match their velocity, so that's speed and direction with each other. They will try and stay away from other boids, but they will also try and move towards the center of their local flock. You can define an angle, so behind them they can't see, and they have a certain radius that they will see other boids and boids together. And if you implement this properly, it can create these beautiful patterns of flocking behavior that simulate birds, but if you adjust it slightly, do fish quite well as well.
Toby focused on setting up the world, getting all of the visuals set up.
So I've got some nice caustics going on the floor there, and then some nice bubbly stuff, which I don't know if it necessarily should be bubbles, like it's maybe too much bubbles for the underwater sea, but it could be like bubbles at certain points. And I've just very recently made them little low poly bubbles, which I think might work quite nicely with the fish. So that's a water texture that's designed for looking at it from above, but I do think it works reasonably well from below. And then I've made it so the caustics get slightly darker as you go down and get slightly brighter as you go up. Basically the whole world is just one giant prism going downwards with then water in the cylinder.
As we said, it was much more of a vibes over gameplay experience, and so having it look nice was really integral to us. While he was doing that, Matt was beginning to work on Boids.
They're not going very well at the moment. So what is happening currently, these don't have any affinity for each other at the moment. I've started off with a script that should randomize their direction slightly and then keep them pointed in that direction, because then we can expand that to actually have them reference each other and move around. But that currently isn't working, because if you look in this camera, the pointing is not working properly. I am going to have to do a little bit of digging. But that's the main thing. It's just getting them to point in the direction they should do. And then once I've done that, I can get them to try and relate to each other. I don't think we're scuppered for end of today having Boids working in some form or another.
I, on the other hand, jumped into Blender and started 3D modeling. We had a minimum list of fish that we wanted, and I just started finding reference images and just building the fish. I knew they were going to have to be low poly. We didn't have time, and I don't have the skill to make 3D realistic fish, so I knew it was going to have to be low poly, and I knew that we were going to have to commit to some kind of sense of style rather than going for realism.
We are now at 48 hours through the 96-hour game jam, and it feels like we're all pretty sane.
The most significant bit on my side is that Boids are working.
We, by this point, had started piecing some of the bits together. We had a main project on GitHub that contained all of the basic start to the world and some fish that were swimming around in it. We had a real sense by the start of that second day that we were going to have something that was going to work. Day 2 was a lot more of the same. There was a lot more 3D modelling. I spent basically the whole day modelling things that we could scatter around the world to start to make it feel a little bit more vibrant and lived in.
Oh.
So this is our little world that is a combination of things that, like shaders that Toby's been writing and various bits that I've been modelling. We now have boats that go back and forth, so this will be where you deposit your rubbish when you knock it up from from the bottom of the sea and it'll disappear up into the boat. Oh, you can sometimes get out of the water near the boat, so that's something to fix. But I think we know how we're going to do that. And then over in the shallows, you've got lots more rocks now and piers to sort of swim around in.
Toby then moved on to the physics system. We knew that having a player character that could push around rubbish was really important to the game. So starting to get that set up was really key.
Pushing around bin bags, but enough about my day job. I'm trying to get the bin bags to do something nice when they disappear. So at the moment I've got it so when you swim towards a bin bag and touch it, it sets off its kind of, okay, I'm being collected animation. And for the time being, that's just shrinking down to 0 size.
It was this day that we encountered our first proper challenge.
It is 5 minutes to 10 on the Sunday, and I have just, after spending the entire afternoon trying to get collision avoidance working, got some very satisfying Boids. The problem is, if we go much above this number of Boids, and there are about 20 little Boids there, we start to lose frame rate, and we want 200 plus fish, not 20 plus fish. Ideally, we want thousands of fish.
We had to make some really hard decisions. We had to sit down and we had a very long chat about whether we axed the Boids and spent the third day, our last day with Matt, just working on some other kind of system that would give a very sort of cheap, faked version of the Boids, something to get the fish moving and get them feeling alive. In the end, Matt was really, really keen to press on. He thought he could get it optimized in the final day he had, so we reassigned the things that he was going to be doing. I took on a lot of the audio stuff that he was going to be doing on his last day, and we had to sort of rejig our schedule. It ended up eating into our polishing day and knocking back our deadline of getting that first finished viable product available on the Monday. But I think it was really worth it in the end because the fish in the game are really incredible.
To bring the world to life, we needed to give the fish a little bit of a wiggle. And so, taking inspiration from Abzu and a very handy GODOT tutorial found on the official docs, I set about making a vertex shader that gives the fish some motion side to side, a pivot around their center point, a kind of body wave that goes down the body, and then a twisting motion as well. And by combining these 4 motions in slightly different ratios, you get what is just objectively perfectly realistic fish motion. And so I kind of handed this over to Josh, and he took that shader and tweaked some of the numbers for each of the different species of fish in the ocean. And it really gave them a lot of character. Gave the green chromis a nice little bobble side to side. The hammerheads just a really majestic sway through the ocean. And the other use of this shader actually was on the kelp as well. It allowed us to save a lot of coding time by just tweaking some of the values down, and then they kind of sway really nicely with the waves. One of the final touches that we added on Tuesday was to take that motion shader and speed it up or slow it down depending on your shoal's acceleration and speed. And so as you move quicker, as you boost through the ocean, you really get a sense that your fish are pushing through the water with their tails. Another shader that we added was caustics. So that's sunlight refracting through the ocean surface onto the seafloor and giving this just beautiful light texture on the ground. And that was done quite simply with 2 cellular noise textures scrolling opposite each other. And so it gives the floor a lot of motion, but without any flow in any particular direction, which would look a bit off-putting. And that same technique was used for the water surface as well, using a slightly different noise texture, but kind of preventing that unrealistic flow in one direction that you just don't see in the ocean. And I think that's everything.
On day 3, we moved into the final sort of sprint of the Game Jam.
Still work to do on Boids, but we've got a version working and we're pretty convinced it's going to work. I'm going to put it in parallel on CPU. Hopefully that'll get us up to maybe 1,000 Boids.
It felt like we were a little bit behind and didn't quite have things in as good a place as we were hoping, but we knew that with the time we had left, if we really worked, we could get where we needed to be. I spent a lot more of the day making all the extra bits for the environment, all the rubbish that was going to be scattered everywhere, and then getting that into the map and set up so that Toby's physics system would work with the different bits of rubbish. Toby was working on refining the physics system, trying to get that pushing feeling much better.
What have I been doing? I've been putting the Boids, Matt's Boids, into the real world. Here we are in the real world, and there are a couple of Boids. I've kind of tweaked the parameters, they're all a bit weird at the moment. But yeah, there's a nice little Boid cloud. The other Boids seem to have separated. And I've also made it so you can go around and start collecting fish to add to your little shoal. Although for the time being, the collection is a little bit janky. This is the closest I've got it so far. It was teleporting it 100 meters away every time. I think it's looking pretty good. I need to increase the player's collision box as it gets bigger.
Thankfully, Matt managed to really pull it out and got the Boids working. It took a few different attempts. I think he had to rewrite the entire code more than once.
Right, so I've been chasing Boyd's performance for what feels like eternity. That's 800 Boyds. It's not quite managing 30 frames there, but it is running in parallel. It hasn't given us a massive performance boost, unfortunately. I think part of the reason we aren't gaining any performance from it is because creating and destroying the threads is a big overhead. So I want to just create the threads once and then every so often pass them a job.
How often are you creating the threads?
Every frame.
In the end, he managed to get them working with plenty of fish and ready to put into our main world on the last day. We don't have any recordings or audio from the last day for me to show what happened because it was just Toby and I, and we were really up against it. So we didn't think once about collecting any kind of content. We were just working solidly. But take it from me, it was a busy day. We did so much. I spent my time. I put music in the game, I put sound in the game, I built the menus, I set up the actual game systems so the water would get clearer when you actually removed the rubbish from the water, and a wind state so that when you'd removed enough of the rubbish you got a special screen and some extra special music. Through the day we were constantly merging into our main branch on GitHub and getting that version exported onto itch. So constantly through the day we were uploading new versions, which I think was really important because it kept making sure that we had something available. By this point I'd done a lot of work on the itch page already, so if something were to go wrong and there was a version that wasn't going to work, we at least had something we could submit all the way through the day on the Tuesday. Toby spent his time getting the Boids that Matt had coded, working with the fish and working with the system that he'd been implementing for the shoaling, which took an immense amount of work and quite a lot of juggling with Matt's code to make it sort of fit into a different sized world with actual objects rather than just points in an empty cube. We did have some challenges through the day. I managed to break the GitHub project, which thankfully Toby was able to fix. And also our first export that we put out didn't work. It took me 8 different export versions to get something that would play on itch in browser. And that was the end of the day. We managed to get something up just before 6 p.m. We were finished, we were complete, we were all really, really happy with the finished product that we put together. Trawler, which you can still play over on our itch page. I'll put a link in the description.
Are we all happy with the name Trawler?
Yeah, I think that's good.
I think when you hear the name Trawler, you're not expecting to play a game about a fish. You're expecting to play a game about a trawler.
In this instance, the fish is the trawler, and that's the clever play on words. So,
yeah,
just to bring you up to speed, Matt, we're making a game where you play a fish that removes rubbish from the ocean.
Let's go with Trawler.
See you next time.